Today I'm making wine and sending it to a pro winemaker to judge. So let's get started. So I found this really great website that ships out frozen, crushed grapes, and I knew it was time to attempt a wine. Here in Oklahoma, we're not really known for our great grapes or wine in general, so my only source for getting the good grapes was to outsource them on the internet. While these grapes were not cheap, I think this brew is going to be really fun. It's also significantly easier than Mead, in my opinion. We're making a merlot, so we're using merlot grapes. I started by letting the frozen crushed grapes thaw and then move them into a new container. We then added our yeast and wine tannin. We're using the Leuven-Borgevin RC212 because I think it'll do really well with this brew, but I don't have a lot of experience with wine, so who knows. After mixing that with the grapes, we took a gravity reading. Our starting gravity for this was 1.105, and it will more than likely end at 1.000, but let's find out if that's true. We put our lid on and let it start fermenting. Because we're using a lot of solid fruit, we needed to punch the cap of the fruit every day. This means that we took and pushed it back down into the liquid at least once a day to make sure the fruit didn't dry out or have any mold take over. About a week and a half later, it was time for our next step. We're gonna need to press these grapes to get all of the juice out of them. Luckily, my buddy BC from Doing the Most let me borrow his wine press. My fermentation hit about 1.020 and we pressed the fruit. We did this before it was done fermenting because we wanted to make sure that the oxygen that was introduced would be used up. This is because fermentation will continue on. Pressing the fruit will definitely gather some oxygen in it. We racked what liquid we could into a bucket with an auto siphon and tubing, and then poured the rest of the fruit in the press and squeezed it until all of the juice was out. We yielded roughly about 4.5 to 5 gallons of wine from this. We let it set for another week to finish fermenting and then racked it into a new container. I racked it into a keg because I didn't have any carboys at the time, but that's okay. We added some French oak chips and let them sit in the brew for 6 weeks. From there we went ahead and bottled it. Our starting gravity was 1.105 and the final gravity was 1.000. I shared this with my friend Rick from the Home Winemaking channel. He's been making homemade wine for years, and I knew he'd be the perfect person to help me grow in this experience. So let's jump to the tasting. Today's video is sponsored by ZBiotics. ZBiotics is a probiotic drink you consume before your alcoholic beverages. If you've ever woken up after a night of drinking and not felt so great, that's because of a byproduct of alcohol called acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde cannot be metabolized or used in our body, and it often causes the adverse effects of drinking. I'm not feeling so great. ZBiotics has found a solution for this. If you consume one of these little ZBiotic half fluid ounce vials, this will counteract and will actually do something with the acetaldehyde in your body, helping you have a better morning after drinking. You drink this right before you go out to drink your water, you do all the things, and the next morning you should have a simpler, nicer morning ahead of you. So if you would like to get 15% off your first order, scan the QR code, check out the link below, and go check out ZBiotics to help you have a better morning after your nights of drinking. Here we are for the tasting. I'm joined by Rick from the Home Winemaking channel, and I am Rick. I'll be honest, I'm nervous because you're a pro winemaker in my world, and this is my first time. We've been talking about it some. My first time doing this in a real capacity. So that's not to say don't rip it up, because I want you to do that. But I'm just telling you, I'm a little nervous. You're the pro here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm flattered. I mean, I'm talking to a pro mead maker as far as I'm concerned, because the wine and mead worlds, while they're kind of adjacent, they're in some ways worlds apart, you know?
Right.
So, yeah, I'd love to try what you got here.
Well, okay, I already explained to you. So this is our Merlot, as I explained, using crushed grapes. You've already got yours poured. I will go ahead and, because everybody cares about this part, what it looks like, of course. It does need to breathe. I do realize that with wine, that's a little bit of a different world. You know, there's a breathing moment. So you've had yours breathing for a second.
Yeah, and this is a super young wine, being at like 6 months old. That's probably as young as I would bottle a wine. Yeah. So what seems to happen is you'll kind of develop this bottle bouquet as it's sat in the bottle for 6 months, 12 months, a year.
Yeah.
And right now I'm gonna drink it as if it's a super young wine.
Yeah. Well, That's very fair. It is young. I realize that too. Part of my world is like I realized I should have aged it longer. I should just wait for a year, but
yeah,
curiosity got me. So
yeah.
What are you picking up on the nose from this guy?
Yeah, so first I'll say the color is spot on. I mean, it's got super rich color. You said he used RC212 yeast, and it's kind of known for pretty rich color. I'm surprised you said you pressed it at 1.020.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised that it's got that good a color, actually. You know, usually I'll let it run dry and even sit on the skins even if 4 or 5 days past dry. But yeah, I would say you've got really good color. I'm picking up some like almost spicy aromas, like your kitchen spices, maybe like a little bit of like clove.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a little bit muted right now, I think. Some of that is just of young wine recently bottled.
Yeah.
So I imagine you very recently bottled this, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's been maybe a month and a half in a bottle, so.
Yeah, so I think what'll happen as this sits on the table here for a couple hours is it'll begin to open up a little bit more, and even if I, open some tomorrow. I got a little, like a hint of like effervescence when it poured.
Mm-hmm.
And what that could be is some in-bottle malolactic fermentation, or even more likely what that could be is just being bottled so young. Usually I have to kind of degas it pretty hard if it's bottled that young.
Okay.
But let's keep in mind too, this has traveled across the country in a hot truck. So
yes,
if a fermentation hasn't completed, that's when it's going to happen.
Which it did. So on the note, you noted. Actually, no. Tell me what you're getting, and I'll come back to it.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit of like red fruit, like I would say like cherry, a little bit maybe. I'm getting a little teeny tiny bit of, there's a ester that can kind of have like a bubblegum kind of smell a little bit to it.
Interesting. Okay.
Super subtle. And those esters are really only present when the wine's young like this.
Right.
I think you can expect that to age out as time goes on.
The tannin here, I'm not used to so much tannin with mead,
Oh yeah, I would
pretty...
say the tannin is pretty, I would say it's right where it probably should be for a 6-month-old wine. I expect a 6-month-old wine to really hit me with tannin, and that's gonna continue to sort of mellow out with time.
Okay.
And actually some of your other acids in the wine will they'll esterify, it's called, so the acids will kind of smooth out as time goes, because the acid and tannin at this age will compete.
Yeah.
It's
definitely high tannin. I get a lot of those fruits you're talking about. I kind of copy pasted from my label like the fruits that it stated, but I'm definitely getting more of what you're saying than the other ones.
It tastes to me like it has a tiny bit of malic acid still, so that gives it that might give it a little bit more of that edge that you're tasting.
Yeah.
That you're perceiving as, it's really just making the tannin hit harder maybe a little bit, because malic acid's a pretty tart acid,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I'd be curious where this, I'm not getting like a ton of oak. I know you said you used what, French oak chips?
Yep. I think it's French medium.
I'm like a heavy oaker personally though.
Yeah.
So that's like a personal preference thing. So I'm not saying it's bad without the oak. It's just, I would say like low for what some red wines get. Sometimes I go a little nuts on the oak.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, I think the body's good. It's coming off a little bit like sweet, just the tiniest bit, like a 0.5 gram per liter or something, like less than 0.5% sugar. Which maybe that was those couple bubbles I was seeing when I first poured it. It's not carbonated by any stretch.
It's interesting.
Something else that'll happen too, and I'll mention, I'm probably drinking this at like 67 degrees. So I always pay really close attention to what temperature I'm serving a wine, because can make all the difference, especially in a young red wine like this. But if you bottle it kind of cold, and then you open the bottle kind of warm, that carbon dioxide will, it's more readily dissolved at cold temperatures and doesn't want to stay dissolved as it warms up.
Right.
So it'll look like it's got a little bit of CO2.
Interesting. Okay.
For that first like pour, basically.
Huh.
So yeah, like what you might think it's fully degassed, but at like 50 degrees, and then it's actually got more gas than can stay in solution at say like 70 degrees.
That's interesting. This is pretty boozy to me. I get a lot of booze on the nose.
Yeah, I'm not thinking it's particularly boozy on the nose for a young wine. And again, I'm drinking this as a 6-month-old wine.
Yeah.
I think it's fine. I think it's, what is it, probably 13.5, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I am getting it's that like harshness on the tongue, which I really think is malic acid a little bit. It could also just be a lot of tartaric acid. And actually I can get a like quick and dirty little pH reading just out of curiosity. The color indicates it's not super low though. So what you'll find with wines is, you know, as the pH gets higher, they become more on like the blue end of the spectrum, blue and purple. Where as the pH gets lower, they're more on the like neon pink to like ruby red end of the spectrum. So you'll notice if you were to pour like a little tartaric acid in this, it would turn like neon pink. Oh,
weird.
So yeah, so the pigment in wine is almost like a pH indicator in a way. So, well, there's a big storm here, so hopefully we keep the power. So I'm getting like 3.81. So it's not low. That's pretty high, I would say. So I would normally shoot for like 3.65 maybe.
Okay.
Like 3.6 to 3.65 plus or minus 5 on that. Part of that is just shelf stability. Like at 3.8, eventually, if another fermentation wants to happen, like malolactic in bottle, it probably will.
Okay.
That also leads me to believe even more that it's maybe a little bit of malic acid that's giving that perception of acid. So you might find that in bottle, it finishes malolactic fermentation. It probably won't make enough carbonation to blow corks, but you might almost want to like uncork them.
Oh no.
And
yeah.
And then kind of like let a little gas out, like shake them up and let a little gas out, and then recork them like in a year from now.
Okay, interesting.
So, but we'll run a test.
Yeah.
I'll probably be able to test it in the next couple days here and see what's going on there.
Well, I'm glad you've told me that because I had no idea. A lot of this is so new to me. You know, I don't.
Yeah.
It's just extra sciencey stuff that I've never had to deal with mead.
Yeah, mead, you're not really dealing with malic acid, where in grapes, the primary two acids are tartaric and malic.
Right.
Malic, obviously, is like the sour apple acid. So in a white wine, I often keep malic, but in a red wine, which I'm generally making dry, I really want to convert the malic into lactic acid.
Okay.
Which, you know, the process, you use malolactic bacteria to do that. And in the process, you create diacetyl, which is like buttery.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where you get that creamy, buttery texture.
Well, I've got some more studying to do because I want to do this again with more experience now. This is fun.
I mean, you told me this is the first red wine you've made from grapes. I think it's tremendous. You know, I mean, if I look back to the first red wines I made, some of them were like not, you know, not good. So I think it drinks like your average store-bought maybe wine. And I think if you take some of the knowledge, or you want to, you know, reach out next time you're doing a red wine, we can see if we can turn it up to like a $30 or $40 wine.
Yeah.
Part of that's going to be just sourcing really good grapes. So,
right.
You know, that's just like mead. I think if you probably have bad honey,
it's
hard to.
It's a game changer. On that note, for anybody who's interested, if you want to learn how to make really good, high quality homemade wine, Rick has his own YouTube channel called the Home Winemaking Channel. And I watched one of your recent videos, and you were taking simple juice and turning it into awesome wine. So it's like, obviously there's levels and layers you're gonna get, but if you're interested in that, go check out Rick. I'll put some links in the description, and he can teach you how to do this at a pro level at home, which is super fun. So yeah, Rick, thank you for giving me some new knowledge. I feel like I have a new charge now to go and do this, if only for myself, just to see if I can figure it out.
I'll give this to my wife later on, see what she thinks about it, and we'll let it breathe a little bit more too, and see what other kind of smells come out.
Cool. All right, well, you guys go check out Rick, and go check out his channel too, because I'll be on it doing some tasting for his stuff as well. Obviously, you know, you need to learn about wine regardless, but I'll be on his channel. I'm excited to be there too. So thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Garrett. Good talking to you.